So the Foraging update has been out for a little bit now, and I wanted to make a first impressions video. My first impression of the Foraging update is that it might be the best update that we have ever received to Hypixel Skyblock, and frankly, I don't even know if it's particularly close. My name's Derailious, and let's get started. The biggest thing I have to say about Galatea and the Foraging update, and by extension the Hunting update, is that it feels simultaneously like the most immersive and most innovative content that we've received in years, and also has a ton of features that I feel like are just fan favorites and people just generally enjoy. So what I mean by that is, look at something like the Heart of the Forest, for example. Very obviously a pretty similar rip of the Heart of the Mountain. They didn't change too much there. However, I don't really feel like they needed to. They understood this was something that worked with a prior skill, let's just carry it over, and I think they did so to pretty great effect. If anything, I feel like leveling Heart of the Forest is a lot better than leveling Heart of the Mountain because you're consistently getting small amounts of XP in the form of the tree gifts, which I think are an absolutely incredible system and frankly a lot more innovative than I anticipated. I really like the idea that you're getting a little boost every single time you chop down a tree. It feels like a little serotonin dump directly into your brain, and I absolutely love it. In terms of other things that I wanted to go over in terms of the innovation on Galatea, I think there's a couple things. Firstly, Agatha's contests are a great innovation on the Jacob's contest formula. You're not competing against other people, you're just going for high scores, and it really feels more enjoyable to work with other people on the island if you want to. But if you want to play by yourself, there's more than enough trees on the island, and they regenerate more than quick enough for it not to be a problem, which I particularly like. The progression on Galatea is definitely a lot different than it is on pretty much any other island, at least because it is so simple and so easy to understand. For the axes, it's relatively linear. You get your fig hue, and then you get your fig stone splitter. That's pretty much it. For the armor, you just get fig armor, and then you're good to go. And they're similar for the equipment. There's some mangrove equipment which you need to get, not really too complicated. I hope they keep that mindset going into future islands. If each island in the future for foraging is going to have two types of wood, I hope the first type is where you get your armor, the second type is where you get your equipment, and you can maybe do a mix of both for the axes if you really wanted to. It does feel a lot simpler and easier to understand for a new player, which I think is good because that allows, new players to get into the game a little bit more easily. Another benefit here is that you don't actually have to grind a crazy amount of time in order to pick up the new gear. I really like that you were able to get a full set of the fig armor within about 4 to 5 hours of gameplay if you were really trying. If you weren't, it took you a little bit longer, but I imagine in the future it won't be that big of a deal, considering that the price of figstone is already falling through the floor. The stats on the island are pretty nice as well. I really like that you're able to go to Swoop, for example, and see all of your information, unlock your milestones, see tree gifts and how they operate, as well as turn on sweep details so you can see exactly how efficient you are in the chat. Sweep is not too hard of a stat to get pretty high and get pretty significant amounts of. There's also a lot of percent sweep all over the island. I imagine that's going to get really crazy in Island 2 and Island 3. They might have to scale that back. But regardless, I think it's fine for now. You can also get quite a lot of foraging fortune on this island from a whole variety of sources. Armor, Heart of the Forest, your cloak, things like that. Really goes like a long way in making grinding on this island pretty simple. There's also a ton of auxiliary stuff on the island. Notably, there's the beacons, which are, well, right here with Boris. They're not too bad. They're pretty simple to max out. There's Forest Essence. There's other stuff you can do at Agatha's contests, like picking up a bunch of rewards for like the frog pet and things like that. There's also the god temples, which I covered in a video. I think that the god temples are probably the most underutilized system there. They feel kind of like an afterthought. They're also weaker than the beacons at like 4 stacks, which I find a little bit crazy. Maybe it's just because not a lot of people have actually signed up for the god temple, but I digress. Hunting feels like it stole the show with this update, like really stole the show. I think that the actual hunting implementation was pretty good. You can say what you want about the refunds, and maybe the refunds weren't great altogether, but we needed to get them done in order to actually get this new system, which in my view is one of the best systems that Hypixel has ever made for Skyblock. Really, really interesting, and adds a lot of reason to go back to old islands or old content and grind out some mobs in order to get, well, new attribute shards. And there are a lot of attribute shards, as you can see, 174 of them. I myself have only gotten about 124 and only maxed 20, so I really need to spend a lot more time involving myself with the system, but I'm actually pretty excited to do so. And I think the main reason is that if I want to, I can either go directly for the mobs that I want and then, fuse them together and then get exactly what I want, or I can go for other things and then use chameleons to fuse together and then get exactly what I want in that regard. There's multiple pathways for me, multiple things that I'm capable of doing, and it also makes me feel like actually foraging on Galatea is worthwhile, because I actually get a bunch of chameleons, and then I can use those chameleons to get the IDs for things that I want. Really interesting system. I love the way it's set up. I really hope that the admins continue to expand on it in future updates, but I wouldn't be that shocked if they did. Another thing that I really liked is that it's not too bad in order to get all of the hunting tools, things like your traps, things like the lasso, the net, and also the hunt axe. All of them are relatively easy to make at a base level, and if you want to level them up, same thing for the black hole by the way, it's just not too expensive, which is good. I do think it's interesting that hunting only goes up to level 25 and not 50. I wonder if they plan on doing like a part 2 to hunting at some point in the far future, but I wouldn't be that shocked if they just wanted to keep it at 25 for now to make it easier to digest and understand. Another thing that I really like are the assaults. I think that's an underappreciated system. Basically how that works is that you're able to turn on assault, which you get from the berries all over Galatea, and I think you can also get them in dungeons as well. And you're able to just kill mobs, and they have a chance of actually giving you the shard that they, have. It's not a very high chance, obviously, but it is pretty interesting nonetheless. The island itself is beautiful, and I think we have to talk about 1.21 features as well. They really utilized 1.21 extremely well, in my view. Not to mention, I feel like this island is one of the most stable that we've ever received, and I don't know if that's just because it's 1.21, or if it's because they're allocating a ton more resources to it than normal. Regardless, my experience on Galatea has been smooth. It has been buttery smooth. I've had very few issues, even though I consistently have problems on the Crimson Isle, for example, I haven't had any on Galatea. I have heard from a bunch of people, though, that other islands have gotten worse TPS-wise this update. That makes me think that it's just an allocation problem and that they need to, eventually dial back how many resources they're giving to Galatea and give more elsewhere. But I imagine also as they update the other islands to 1.21, which is their stated goal, things will slowly get better. The builds are great, all of the new creatures are incredible, and another thing that I really like that I forgot to go over before is the new pressure resistance system. I love being able to dive below the waters here and interact with a bunch of the mobs in various ways. The spin mechanic is extremely silly, but I really like it. And there's also stuff like the cods, which are just not too bad to get. You just throw your net at them a bunch of times and you're good to go. There's also a ton of secret areas, and I put secret in quotes because a lot of them aren't that secret, but regardless, I already made a video on pretty much everywhere you could go that you may have missed on Galatea, and trust me, there's a lot going on here. There's also some combat areas, which I think is pretty interesting. There's this area behind the cave, and you're able to interact with a bunch of mobs here. None of them are particularly dangerous or anything like that. Obviously, this is meant to be an early game area, but you are able to interact with them if you want to and get their shards, which I highly recommend. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is David's cloak, which is probably the best cloak in the game. Not even close, it is just ridiculous. You get it at David, and you're able to upgrade it by doing things around Galatea related to hunting. So if you, for example, do a bunch of forest hunts, you will get a lot of foraging fortune on the cloak, I believe. And if you do a bunch of salt hunts, and this can be anywhere by the way, you will get a ton of hunting XP. This is probably the best way to level up hunting XP, aside from ghosts, which are the best way by a mile. Just do ghosts, it's so simple. You also get a ton of sweep for actually partaking in the system. You level up your David's cloak, and as you can see, the stats on mine are absolutely ridiculous. The update is not literally perfect though. I do have some small issues. I think one of my bigger ones, ironically enough, is the booster system. it just doesn't really feel like it needs to exist. I mean, I feel like this could have just not dropped at all, and I don't think anyone would have cared. I understand why they would add something like this, but if anything, it just clogs up the inventory from tree gifts, and I think that we need less like permanent stat boosts on items in this game, not more. Once again, understand why they would want to add it, but at the same time, it just doesn't really feel like it's used super well. Another thing that I've seen a lot of people talking about is the fact that mining seems to have had a lot of issues related to this update, and also there's just been a lot of bugs in general. That is just something that's going to happen when an update is this large, but obviously they need to fix them. Apparently there is going to be a patch early next week, so if there are still major issues past that point, I will absolutely be making a video on it. But for now, I'm not too concerned. I think that they will actually fix things like they promise. Oh yeah, also in terms of pets, I really think the Jade Dragon is interesting, but it's not that crazy broken overpowered, I don't think. And I don't really understand why some people are upset about it being on the first island of Galatea. I don't think necessarily that we should wait until the third island to have something like that exist in the first place. Who knows, maybe they're going to do other dragons or other foraging related things on other islands, who knows at that point. Regardless, I think the pet's interesting. I feel like we could have gotten more pets, though, overall with this update. We got a lot of accessories, we got a lot of auxiliary skills and recipes and things like that to unlock, but not a ton of pets, which is a little interesting, especially considering that, now we're in 1.20. On a much smaller note, the park also got revamped. I think it's pretty good. The questline is a little long for someone who's just trying to get to Galatea, but I imagine if you're not, day one-ing it, it's probably a lot better overall. I love the biome usage, I love the colors here, everything just looks great, especially the spruce area. Like, this is beautiful, man. They did an incredible job. Regardless, I really do hope that we get other islands in 1.21 relatively soon. This is just a great thing to see. Hopefully it leads to more expansion and more improvements in the near future. Overall, I think the biggest thing that Galatea and the Foraging update and the Hunting update have done for me is give me hope about Skyblock's future. For a while, I was kind of aimless in terms of what I thought Skyblock would be in 3 to 5 years. If you asked me that question a year ago, I would not be able to give you a good answer. I would probably say something like, don't worry guys, the Foraging update would be out, and things would be better. Now, the Foraging update is out, and I'm glad to say it's a pretty damn good update and pretty damn good experience. I highly recommend going out there, foraging for yourself, seeing if you enjoy it, and if you do, you can look to the future, fellas, because I'll see you then.